Good morning. I'm continuing my reading from the first book of First Kings from the Old Testament of the Holy Bible. I'm reading from chapter 7, verse 13 onwards. And King Solomon sent and fetched Hiram out of Tyre. He was a widow's son of the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a man of Tyre, a worker in brass. He was filled with wisdom and understanding and cunning to work all works in brass. And he came to King Solomon and wrought all his work, for he cast 2 pillars of brass of 18 cubits high apiece, and a line of 12 cubits did compass either of them about. So he made 2 chapiters of molten brass to set upon the tops of the pillars. The height of one chapter was 5 cubits, and the height of the other chapter was 5 cubits. And nets of checker work and reeds of chain work for the chapiters were upon the top of the pillars, 7 for one chapiter, 7 for the other chapiter. And he made the pillars in 2 rows upon one network to cover the chapiters that were upon the top with pomegranates, and so did he with the other chapiter. And the chapiters that were on the top of the pillars were of lily work in the porch, 4 cubits. And the chapiters upon the 2 pillars had pomegranates also above, over against the belly, which was by the network, and the pomegranates which were 200 in rows round about the other chapiter. And he set up pillars in the porch of the temple, and he set up the right pillar and called the name thereof Jachin, and he set up the left pillar and he called the name thereof Boaz. And upon the top of the pillars was lily work, so the work of the pillar was finished. And he made a molten 10 cubits from one brim to the other. It was round all about, and his height was 5 cubits. And a line of 30 cubits did compass it round about. And under the brim of it, round about, 3 were knobs compassing it, 10 in a cubit, compassing the sea round about. The knobs were cast in 2 rows when it was cast. It stood upon 12 oxen, 3 looking toward the north and 3 looking toward the west, and there looking toward the south, and there looking toward the east. And the sea was set above them, and all the hinder parts were inward. And it was a handbreadth thick, and the brim thereof was wrought like the brim of a cup with flowers of lilies. It contained 2,000 baths. And he made 10 bases of brass. 4 cubits was the length of one base, and 4 cubits of the breadth thereof, and 3 cubits the height of it. And the work of the bases was on this manner. They had borders, and the borders were between the ledges. And on the borders that were between the ledges were lions, oxen, and cherubims. And upon the ledges there was a base above, and beneath the lions and oxen were certain additions made of thin work. And every base had 4 brazen wheels, plates of brass, and 4 corners thereof had undersetters under the laver, where undersetters molten at the side of every addition. And the mouth of it within the chapiter and above was a cubit, but the mouth thereof was round after the work of the base, a cubit and a half. And also upon the mouth of it were gravings with their borders, 80 north round. And under the borders were 4 wheels, and the axle trees of the wheels were joined to the base, and the height of the wheel was a cubit and half a cubit. And the work of the wheels was like the work of a chariot wheel. Their axle trees and their naves and their felloes and their spokes were all molten. And there were 4 undersetters to the 4 corners of one base, and the undersetters were from the very base itself. And on top of the base was a round compass of half a cubit high, and top of the base the ledges thereof, and the borders thereof were the same. For on the plates were the ledges thereof, and on the borders thereof he graved cherubims, lions, and palm trees, according to the proportion of every one, and additions round about. After this manner he made the 10 bases. All of them had 1 casting, 1 measure, and 1 size. Then made he 10 layers of brass, 1 layer containing 40 baths, and every layer was 4 cubits, and upon every one of the 10 bases 1 layer. And he put 5 bases on the right side of the house, and 5 on the left side of the house. And he set the sea on the right side of the house, eastward, over against the south. And Hiram made the lavers and the shovels and the basins, and Hiram made an end of doing all the work that he made King Solomon for the house of the Lord. The 2 pillars, 2 bowls of the chapiters that were on the top of the pillars, 2 networks to cover the bowls of the chapiters that were on top of the pillars, 400 pomegranates for the 2 networks, or 2 rows of pomegranates for one network to cover the bowls of the chapiters that were upon the pillars, and the 10 bases and 10 layers of the bases, and the 1 sea and the 12 oxen under the sea, and the pots and the shovels and the basins and all these vessels which Hiram made to King Solomon for the house of the Lord were of bright brass. In the plain of Jordan did the king cast them, the clay ground between Succoth and Sartan. And Solomon left all the vessels unweighed, because they were exceedingly many, neither was the weight of the brass found out. And Solomon made all the vessels that pertained to the house of the Lord, and the altar of God, and the table of gold whereupon the shewbread was, and the candlesticks of pure gold, 5 on the right side, 5 on the left, and before the oracle with the flowers, and the lamps, and the tongs of gold, and the bowls, and the snuffers, and the basins, and the spoons, and the censers of pure gold, and the hinges of gold, both for the deckers of the inner house, the most holy place, and for the doors of the house, to wit, of the temple. So thus was ended all the work of the house of the Lord. And Solomon brought in the things which David his father had dedicated, even the silver and the gold, and the vessels did he put among the treasures of the house of the Lord.